So maybe you have a 19-year-old. They recently graduated and now they're barely talking to you. You walk by them in the kitchen and all you get is a grunt or maybe nothing at all. Or maybe you have a daughter who snuck out in the middle of the night and she moved in with her boyfriend. And this is a bad dude and it's a bad situation and you're worried that you're never going to talk to her again. Or maybe your son used to be really close. You used to talk all the time and connect, and now it's like there's a wall between you. You're walking on eggshells, and every time you try to talk, he avoids you and he shuts down. And you're wondering, where did it go wrong along the way? And what do I need to do? Are we on a path to one of those estrangement situations? Right? So maybe you're just worried about it because there's distance forming, or maybe you're in a situation where your child has actually left. There's a wall there. They're not communicating. We want to understand what's going on. And I want to talk about some of these situations that I have worked with as a therapist, the families, the parents, and the children I've worked with, and some themes, some patterns that I see and I notice. So if any of this sounds familiar, you're not alone, right? And there's usually a lot more going on under the surface than people realize. And I can't tell you how many times people have been asking me about these type of questions in these situations. So that's why we're talking about it. And we're probably going to even talk about this for a couple of weeks, right? I see this as maybe a series where we're going to get a little bit deeper each time. We'll see where it goes. So there are some common themes and patterns that you see with estrangement and how it builds. So I want to give you kind of from the experience perspective. And this is a lot of what I hear when I'm actually talking to young adults. But some of the common themes that I hear is control, right? Young adults who feel like they have very little say, everything is very controlled, right? And they often feel like it's harsh. They have no say. They have no way of really communicating their side of things. And there's also usually an element of, we'll call it humiliation, right? Where they feel like something very unfair is being done to them and it's not right. It's not right how they're treated. They feel controlled. They don't feel heard. They don't have a mechanism or a way to express themselves. And they get to a point where, why am I even talking with my parents, right? Nothing is going to change. And that's another big point of it. When they get hopeless and how they share that hopelessness is a lot of times they'll say, I don't believe my parents are going to change. I don't believe they're going to do anything different. I don't believe they're ever going to listen to me. They're going to keep hurting me. They're going to keep being cruel and harsh and all that. That's their perspective. That's what I'm hearing from those children is some sort of version or combination of those factors that make them start to feel like they have no choice but to distance. And a lot of times they say it's out of safety, right? They can't stand feeling hurt anymore. They can't stand feeling invalidated and not important anymore or not cared for anymore. Now, on the extreme side of this, kind of the fast track to uh, distance and estrangement is when there's actually physical or psychological abuse. And I'm not going to really talk about that extreme because that's pretty self-explanatory. However, most homes where there has been that adult child that has left or even that older teenager that is just completely shut down and moved off, usually there's been some very hurtful interactions that borderline on a psychological or even physical emotional abuse. And sometimes it goes both ways, right? There's been some really heavy altercations in the home, right? So if you put that together, right, they're feeling controlled, they're not feeling heard, they don't really even feel safe in the home. It just blows up. It's just so emotionally charged, and they don't feel cared for. And on top of that, if they feel humiliated, right, that they don't deserve the way they're being treated, and it's just unduly harsh. As it's moving down that path, they're like, "See ya, I don't want to be here anymore." Um, And to be honest with you, sometimes I've talked with young adults and they needed to do something, right? They really needed to protect themselves. And I know a lot of you parents, this is more common than we realize. I've seen stats that have been as much as 1 in 4 parent-child relationships have some form or some period of estrangement involved, right? Of that extreme distance. So many of you have been in that situation. And maybe with your parents, you had to get out of there. You had to create that just to have a sense of yourself and safety. Um, and that's just natural. So I'm not blaming, I'm not making any conclusions right now. I'm just letting you know that uh, when a human is starting to feel all those things, no matter how much it's real, rational, if it's just perceived or it's somewhere in between, right? They're going to seek safety. They're going to seek distance. And so that's a lot of what is happening in the kids' perspective of it. On the other side, what I see that's very common with parents is they're on the other side of it where uh, they uh, they're worried about losing their child, but they they're concerned about the behavior. They feel like their child is going down a bad path. They're making bad choices. Really, a lot of times it's the parents will tell me the children are behaving or making choices that are in like direct contradiction of their values, right? Their values and what they've taught their children and what they believe is the right way. And they also feel like their children are making bad choices. And sometimes they really are making bad choices. It's 10 out of 10 parents would hear what this child is doing and they would say, yeah, that's not going to work out. That's a bad choice. And so the parents are thinking, we've got to correct this. We've got to do something about this. But the problem is it tends to come across as control, or it is control. It doesn't feel loving, right? A lot of times you've heard me talk about this. It's probably going to come up in some way, form, or fashion in every group we do, where I talk to parents about staying away from the extremes. So sometimes parents, one extreme is avoidance, right? And something's going on in their child, their behavior, what they're doing, what they're not doing, and the parents are hoping it'll just correct itself or it'll change, but it doesn't, and it gets to a place where the parents then have to jump in, and then they tend to go to the other extreme, which is control, right? We got to make them stop. We got to fix this. We can't take this anymore, and neither one of them, those paths lead to connection. They're extreme reactions, and there's not a connection that happens. Even if the situation resolves itself, either the kid figures it out or the parents make something change, it's still not connection. And estrangement is more about your relationship, right? The relationship deteriorates. So that's a big point that I'm going to be making and continue to make, is it's so much about the relationship. But that pattern that I'm describing, that's a lot of the buildup, right? There's something that is happening in that home. There's something that's happening with that kid, and the parents and the children are not able to come together and feel love, feel connection, feel relationship, and solve the problem, right? Fix the situation. And a lot of times what happens in those conversations, what I'm hearing, see, I'm still just giving you some insight into what I hear from these older teens and young adults, is they don't have a place to share their thoughts, right? Their emotions, their reasoning. They never get a chance to share that, because a lot of times parents jump in and they correct, or they say that's not right, or that's not going to work, and they don't have a place to explore who they are. The kids don't have a place to explore, like, why do I want to do this? Why am I thinking this way? What should I do here? Or why isn't this a good idea, right? And to the extent that they feel like they can't talk, then they feel really shut down, and that's kind of the beginning point of some distancing that happens. So parents, I really encourage parents to uh, learn how to connect. Learn how to connect with their kid and understand the relationship, understand the nature of the relationship between you and your child and how to make that stronger, right? To know what's in your child's heart and mind, for them to be able to feel safe and comfortable to talk to you. And once you've gotten to a place where this stuff has cycled and there's layers of hurt um, and yeah, pain and all that, it takes a lot of work. But we're gonna get into that. So let me kind of summarize what I'm saying so far. You tend to have a situation where a child doesn't feel, at whatever age, but usually we're getting into teenagers or young adults. They feel controlled. They feel they're not understood. They feel like they're being treated unfairly. They don't feel like anything's going to be better, and it's often really harsh, and they don't deserve this. And then on the other side, you have a parent who's really concerned about the behavior that their child's doing, and they know they need to do something about it, but it has cycled around and around, and every time they've missed, right, and they've repeated this, it's a shutdown, it's an argument that leads to a shutdown, it's things that are said that are hurtful, it's things that are ignored, it's critical moments where there should be love and connection, and instead there's distance and hurt and pain, and that cycles over and over. The home and the relationship becomes ever more hopeless, ever more unsafe, as in I'm never going to be able to be myself. We're never going to be able to talk about this without feeling attacked or hurt. So everyone starts to react and withdraw. That is often the type of pattern you see. There is another factor that really ramps up the process of distance and estrangement, right? And I call this the third party factor. This is boyfriends, this is girlfriends, this is friend groups. And if you think about it this way, at home, if you have a child at whatever age, but especially teenager, adult child, they're not feeling safe. They're not feeling heard. They don't feel validated and connected. They feel like they're being treated harshly and unfairly, and they can't be themselves. They're constantly controlled, and they just don't want to be in that environment. If they make a connection with somebody else or another group of people who validate them, who show them that they are important, who include them, there's a sense of belonging, and maybe that group even encourages them to distance from their parents and validates that they are being treated unfairly and this is a bad situation, and join with me, I will take care of you, we will include you, right? When that's not there, sometimes they won't jump. They won't go anywhere because where else am I going to go, right? This is all I know. But when they make that connection with that third party who cares about them or seemingly cares about them and all that validation, it's very easy for them to get pulled away. So many times when I hear about these situations where kids have left the home or are completely shut down, it is because there's that third party effect, right? They have somewhere else where they feel that connection, feel that relationship, and honestly, it's so intoxicating, so entrapping, so inviting. It's almost like addictive. Like they can't not choose to move to that direction, and it's kind of proportional to the extent that the home is unhealthy and unsafe and chaotic and angry and all that. the more appealing this third party is going to be, that they're going to gravitate towards. Um, Here's a really important point about that, though. And let me stop for a second. If you're in that situation, that's a very scary place, right? And I know even talking about that might be triggering someone listening to this talk at whatever point you're listening, because the pain of a child writing you off and moving out and seemingly pledging their love and loyalty and connection to another person who didn't grow up with them, who didn't raise them, who didn't go through all the hard times, who haven't proven themselves. I mean, that hurts, and that can feel like betrayal. And for parents, that's a whole nother layer of hurt and pain that they are carrying. But here's something that often happens. I mean, often as in more times than not, the majority of the time. That third party, that thing that they went to, that boyfriend, that girlfriend, that friend group, it's going to fall apart or change in some way, right? There's going to be a breakup. They're going to feel betrayed by that friend group. It's going to turn out to be not that good of a situation, right? There's going to be, it's very unhealthy, and they don't feel safe there either. And what looked like was going to be a great time turned into, whoa, this is a crappy, dangerous place. Maybe they run out of money, right? And they have no other options. But something usually happens, and they either have to find something else, or they are going to come back home, right? That becomes the next best option, or their only option. That is a very critical moment for parents, because the hurt and the pain of being left and being seemingly betrayed or left for another person that they pledge their loyalty and they write you off, the hurt and the pain of that is real, and it's still with you. And where what we would want is for parents to be able to ultimately let that go. And when I say letting go, that is a process that takes work. You just don't forget it. But if you let that hurt and pain, your hurt and pain, get projected on your kid who's just coming back, that's a whole nother layer for them, right? Now they feel even more unsafe. They went away. Maybe they were a little hopeful that it was going to be better, or something could work out, or there'd be some grace. And what they got was just another layer of blame, shame, control. You don't want to fall in that path. And for some parents in that situation, I mean, there's a little bit of a honeymoon, like we're glad they're back. But then, that pain and the memory comes in, and that's a critical moment that can go either way, right? And so the focus in those moments needs to be not about the past, finding blame. It's about moving forward. What's this going to look like now? And then over time, having opportunities to process that emotion and that pain. That's also what therapists are for. That's what really good friends with good heads on their shoulders are for, or mentors, or people you trust. Those are the people that you tell about your pain and your hurt, and you work through that. You don't want to project that on your kid in that critical moment, because you have what you want, right? They're back, but the reason they're back is even a hard one to take for parents. Right? They're back because that thing that they left me for fell apart, and now they're back here. So is this going to last? What's happening? It's a chance. It's an opening, an opportunity. I feel a lot of parents have opportunities that they miss. They miss their opportunities of repair, their opportunities of connection, and the parents don't see them. And I get it. I've been there. We've all been there, right? We're blinded by our emotion. We're blinded by our hurt, and we can't see what needs to be done for a relationship or for ourselves. So that is just I guess, a snapshot. It's more a snapshot. It's a big explanation of talking about some of the patterns that happen that lead to that distance. You might be listening and saying, "Well, that's not quite us." I know, right? There's every situation is a little different, and some are a lot different, right? There's sometimes that families have had something happen to them that's very traumatic, and it wasn't because of the parents, it wasn't because of the kids, it was something outside that the family went through that was so horrible that everyone was hurt. And even in those situations, though, it's usually they weren't able to find a way to come together. Again, not blame, right? Everyone's doing the best they can, and everyone's been knocked on their feet by whatever this thing that has happened, and there's just so many things out of your control. And so it's not about blame. It's about, all right, we went through this, and this is the reason why everyone got separated. This is why we were estranged from each other. How do we get back? What are the opportunities? All right. So what a lot of parents will ask me is, I think this is like a core dilemma for parents. How do we set boundaries, right? How do we address the behavior that is a problem, the poor choices? How do we set boundaries without pushing them away? That is where your approach matters, right? Because what I described before were these patterns where there had been avoidance, there had not been connection, there had not been talking about things, and then they had to react or deal with something, or something got so bad, and then it went to control, or it went to anger, it went to emotions, which emotions are very often used as manipulation and control and such. And so it's been in those kind of patterns. We're talking about an approach that builds connection, right? So there's still limits, there's still boundaries, but let's talk about what healthy boundaries are. Let's kind of reframe the idea of boundaries here. Effective boundaries help your child learn, right? They help them make better decisions. They help support development and maturity because they give them a sense of self, right? This is your life. This is your choices. And when parents can respect the personhood of their child, that they have their own emotions, that they have their own thoughts, that they have their own beliefs, and they get to, right? That they're allowed to have them, even when they differ from you, even when it's obviously a poor choice. That's their choices. That's who they are. And so we don't shame them, we don't put them down, we don't shut them off. We allow them to express. Those are conversations. Those are relationships. Like, okay, well, you think that it's the sky's orange. I don't know why I went with that. Contrast, right? You think the sky is orange all the time, not just at sunset, but all the time. Why? Why do you think that? Not like you're stupid or that's dumb or we're not even going to talk about that. So whatever they're talking about, it's that place of, okay, that's your place. Why is that there? You know, you're connecting. You're building a sense of I should have come up with a better example there, but a sense of this is your way of being and thinking, but let's talk that through, right? And then we need to get to kind of reality of like, well, maybe in that weird analogy that I already started or metaphor that I'll go with is, you know, if you tell everyone that the sky is orange all the time, they're probably going to see it this way, right? They're probably you're going to experience this, you're going to experience that. Is that what you want in your life, right? We're going to kind of help you refine how you think about things, you know, because the boundaries help teach. So boundaries should feel like help, even loving, right? They shouldn't feel like control. When you're setting a boundary, you're talking with your kid about okay, we understand that this is what you're thinking and how you see it and what you want, um, but let's talk about where that can go, right? Let's talk about why that might not be the best choice. And yes, there are firm limits. I'm not a softie with everything. I'm soft on connection, right? Be open to the heart and the mind and the personhood of your child. But there's times when you got to say no, right? This is not going to happen. And they're not going to always understand it right there. Uh, but the boundary when we're talking about adult children is it's more about the things that they need to be responsible for in their life and the things that you are not going to take care of anymore. Right? But the message of all of it is, I'm doing this to help you. I'm doing this to support you and to connect with you. And so those are the type of the conversations where you focus on connection, right? And the message that you want to come across in these conversations is, we love you, we want to help you, we want to help you find your way. So let's talk about how to get there. Right? Your feelings, your thoughts, they matter, even if we don't see it the same way. But then there's another reality, right? There's the reality of other people. That's boundaries, right? Well, you may want to, maybe another extreme one, but maybe you want to hang around all the time and never do your clothes and have other people do it for you and clean up for you and pay for you and all that. But that's not okay with the reality of the other people, which might be us parents. And so we are going to set a time frame for when this stuff's going to stop, and then we're going to talk about it as we get there. So those type of conversations where you acknowledge that they get to make choices on their life, but you also make choices on your life. Now, when you start having these conversations, there is something very important to keep in mind. There's likely years of bad cycles, poor decisions, arguments, hurt, reaction, pain, and that has cycled over and over. Each one of those is a layer of mistrust, lack of hope, hurt feelings, all of that stuff. And what tends to happen is, well, from your child's perspective, when you start changing and coming to them and talking to them about what's going on with them, they're probably not going to believe it. They probably don't want to believe it, right? They don't want to trust the change because they don't want to get hurt again, right? They don't believe what you're talking about is going to work. They don't believe you, and they probably just want to avoid going through that cycle again. Whatever it is, whatever their reasoning, a lot of times you're going to get pushback. So you need to be ready for testing and pushback. What that often looks like is you sit down and you try to have a heart-to-heart, you try to connect with them, and they aren't interested. They don't want to talk to you. Or maybe they push your buttons, right? They believe that you are an uncaring person that doesn't really want to help them, that you're just setting them up for something. So they're going to push your button in the way they know that it will tick you off, and it does. And then you react, you get angry, and then they say, see, I knew it wasn't real. I knew you were just doing the same thing over and over. I'm not saying it's okay for them to push those buttons or be inappropriate, but if you see it from a different way, right? If you see it as someone who's hurt and trying to protect themselves, someone who doesn't believe yet that you're really changing the way that things are happening, that you're, then they're going to push back. They're going to test. So your parental response needs to have a lot of patience, a lot of persistence, and follow through. And the follow through is following through on conversations about connecting and boundaries, following through on the boundaries. How are you doing emotionally? How are you doing on the inside? How are you doing with getting that job? How are you doing with the deadlines? Let's talk about it. Do you need help? Do you need support? Right? And some of those conversations are going to get shut down right away. Some of those are they're just going to take a while before you can get to that place where the trust is building again. But it's worth it. It is absolutely worth it. All right, I'm going to get into some questions that, and what I did is, let me just see if I can. I'm looking at my phone because sometimes there are, well, I don't even see it now. Things will show up on my phone that didn't, my phone's not even working right. Okay. All right. Some questions, and there was quite a lot of questions, and I put them into some categories, and I want to go over just a few of them. So one of the categories was, what do I do when they won't talk to me at all? A few weeks back, if you look through the older videos, that is all we talked about on one of the talks is, they won't talk to you, they won't connect. But I want to go over a few points with that because that's just a regular thing that comes up. First of all, don't force or open the conversation with change, right? Don't force change. Don't start with how they've screwed up, where they're getting it wrong, what they need to change. That is just guaranteeing a shutdown. Why would they participate in a conversation like that? You want to lead with love, right? Maybe even try this. Let them know, like, hey, I want to make things better between us. Can you tell me how? Or can you tell me why you're not talking with me, right? What is the reason? Maybe you just need to spend time with them. They won't talk to you about anything serious, but if they'll spend some time with you, they'll watch a show, they'll grab a burger, go do that, right? And don't overreact to their silence. A lot of parents, just put yourself in this situation. I think anyone can relate, right? You want to connect with someone, and you're really trying. You're being kind, you're being sensitive, you're approaching it a different way, and they slam the door in your face, right? They don't want to talk to you. Or maybe even they tell you to get out of their life. That hurts. Right? That's a tough spot to be, and it's hard not to show that disappointment, and it's hard not to overreact. So obviously that hurts. Obviously that's not the response you want, and it affects you, but you don't want to create another cycle where now you're like, well, screw you, I didn't want to talk to you anyway, or you're going to slam a door, or you're going to scream at them, or you know what, you're going to make me feel this way, I'm going to make you feel this way too. Right? That's not how you're gonna break through those walls. So go talk to someone else about how much it hurt, but keep trying with your kid. If they're not talking to you, it's going to take more than one or two times, and it's going to take a different approach, right? And it's going to be one where they feel that they can safely talk about things in the way that they want to talk about. And then when they do start talking, there's going to be a difference in the way they see it and what they say and how you see it, and that's going to lead to an opportunity to either listen to them and work through things, or another argument cycle. Okay, another question that's been asked. People say, what if they're making really bad choices? Am I just supposed to let it go? No, you're supposed to talk about it. Why are they doing what they're doing? Right? What's the reason? When I talk to young adults, teenagers, and they're obviously making some poor choices, they're getting in trouble, it's not working out for them, I want to find out why. right? Why is it appealing to them? Why are they choosing to go that path? There is a reason, and I'm going to assume it is a good reason for them, right? It's a valid reason, right? That I'm going to give them the respect that they're not stupid, that there is, maybe they're misguided, they're in a lot of pain, they've given up, whatever, but there is a reason. And I want to understand what's going on. What's the appeal? Why are you doing this? And then when you have connected around why they're doing what they're doing, and that might take multiple conversations, right? Then you can share your side of it, which is more about your hopes for their life and what they're doing, right? It's not control. It's saying, like, I'm really worried about this. And then in some situations, it ultimately does get to, I can't allow you to do this, or I'm not going to fund this, or I'm not going to participate. But when you've taken the time to hear them out and then to lovingly share why you need to set boundaries, and then you set boundaries, it's much more likely to be received, even if they don't like it. Because people don't like it when boundaries make them change what they have to do, because someone else is changing what they're doing, right? And I don't have an option to do this anymore. That might be their coping mechanism. That might be the way that they feel love and support, is being in this other relationship or doing this thing, and now they're going to have to change that, right? They're not going to be happy with it. But what you're wanting is that hopefully they understand why you're doing what you're doing, why you're setting the boundaries. And again, the best scenario is to get to a place where you can problem solve around those boundaries, right? That main boundary of, this is your life. This is your life. And we want you to be happy. We want you to be confident. We want you to, what you're doing day to day is getting you where you want to go. So how can we help you? How can you do that? What are the choices and decisions you need to make? Right? Those are the best boundary discussions. Last question in this category is, what if I've already messed this up? Can the relationship even be repaired? Yes, of course, right? And of course, there's a difference in where people are and how far off the relationship is. If you have zero contact with your child for a long period of time, what you start with is you, right? Looking at your side, your approach, your patterns, right? And being able to see where you can make change, your own growth, and then where the opportunities are to reconnect. I very rarely have found situations where there's like this total long-lasting estrangement where at least before there wasn't a few opportunities that were missed to connect. It's just the same cycles happen, right? So where the adult child says, okay, I'll try this again, but it's got to look like this. And the parent's like, no, it can't look like that. I'm not going to do it this way. It's got to be this way. And they feel controlled and shut down. You're going to have to find a place in the middle to start, right? You've got to find that place that's kind of like a common ground. And but when you find it, it's a great place, right? It's a place of I know who I am as a parent and as a person, and what is okay and what's not okay, what I can do for you, what I can't do for you. And when your adult child is able to find that kind of same place of, okay, this is my life. I know better what's okay for me, what's not okay, and now we can start talking and connecting. That's what you want. But that takes a lot of work. And that's probably what we're going to focus in on next week, is some of those more difficult situations. I'll see how the group responds. I get a lot of comments afterwards and through the week. But definitely want to stay on this theme in some way or fashion. So I'm going to end with that.